Welcome to Evolution on the Mic. I am your host, Ariana de la Cruz.
And I'm your co-host, Antoine Dove.
And we are back, season 8, Faith in Others, episode 6, Forgiving because God's Not Done Yet. In our last episode, we talked about family. We explored what it means to heal family bonds, rebuild trust, and invite God into those broken places. True healing doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds through prayer, forgiveness, and small steps of faith we choose along the way. The good news is that God's heart is always up for restoration. Y'all, I was highly vulnerable in the last episode. I really hope that you got something out of it. And if you didn't watch it, I highly recommend that you go back and watch that episode. You know, it was highly vulnerable, it was real, it was relatable, all about healing family bonds and those parts of you that are broken, that God can come in and heal you and those around you, and God can do it all. So I highly recommend you watch that if you didn't already. On today's episode, we're talking about forgiveness and second chances. Not because people always deserve them, but because God's plan in their life isn't finished yet. And the truth is, he isn't finished with us either. Antoine, how you doing? You good?
I'm good. I'm ready to jump into
I'm
this
just,
episode.
I am just, ready to dive into this because, like, we're talking about forgiveness, but this is like from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Antoine has his own spin that he's gonna give about, forgiveness and second chances, and I'm just so excited to get in. I'm doing good. I'm doing great. You know what I mean? Loving what we're doing here, loving what we're building, and I just can't wait to continue sharing in what God has been putting in our hearts. So I'm going to open the floor up to Antoine that, is really going to be talking about second chances and forgiveness and, from his lens and perspectives.
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about our last episode that we
Yeah.
had where we were talking about forgiveness and more from the family perspective. And I think we both had went to a place where we were acknowledging our own journey and experience that we went through with forgiving family members and even having to forgive and apologize for things maybe we've done. In my case, having to apologize for how I perceive things. But as I was thinking about forgiveness, I mean, forgiveness is such a powerful resource. And I say
Mm.
resource because that's kind of how I view it. Like forgiveness itself, when you're forgiving someone, it's almost like when you forgive, you release something, like you let go of something that you've been holding on, which frees up energy, frees up space, frees up everything that you need to be able to do whatever you want to do in life, right? So like if you're struggling with getting past whatever it may be, like I'm having a writer's block on trying to write something, and letting go allows you to create the space to be able to move forward. And so as I was thinking about
Mm-hmm.
my life and areas of my life where I've had a similar experience, one of the ones that had came up for me was the relationship and stuff that I've been cultivating and working on as it relates to my daughter's mom.
Mm.
And, you know, that became big for me because one of the things I kept coming back to in terms of a question was, you know, how do you look past the pain to forgive someone? And it's not necessarily just related to my situation, but I think with anyone's situation, when it comes to forgiveness, there's a lot of different things that prevent us from being able to forgive. But the big one for me has always been pain. And that pain can be related to betrayal. That pain
Mm.
can be related to disappointment. That pain can just be related to just pure, sheer, like emotional hurt. And when I
Mm.
thought about that relationship for me, when we were together, things was great. But when things were over, things got dark and bad, and things were
Yeah.
said and things were done that when you look back, anyone that's been through like a bad breakup, when you look back, it's painful. It's painful to think about. And then you lose all the trust that you have in that person to even believe that they have the ability to change. And that was the
Mm.
place that I found myself in. It's like for so many years after we ended our relationship, even though we had a daughter and we was like, we got to figure out this whole co-parenting thing together, I lacked a lot of trust in believing that she could be someone different than who I
Mm.
experienced. And I think she felt the same way about me in some regards. And because of that, it prevented me from being able to forgive her for the things that had occurred in our relationship. And because I was
Mm.
unable to forgive her, it made conversations difficult. It made our ability to get things done together difficult, which you don't want in a co-parenting relationship. When you're in something where you have to work with someone, you don't want there to be friction. And in a situation where you're like co-parent relationship, there isn't this like, okay, bye, never can see you again. Like you both have a responsibility to take care of that child. And so you have to show up in a way in which even if you may not like the person on the other side, you have to work together because all of it in the end of the day is for what's best for the child. And that was what we were going through. And I remember us having tough conversations in the earlier days. And all of the tough conversations, all for me, were centered around the experiences I had with her. So
Mm,
if, for instance, there was experiences of lack of trust, that would be what come up for me. Like, oh, I don't want to do this because,
mhm,
I expect you're going to act this way because I've seen you do that in the past. Or even Ariana was talking about some of this stuff earlier, like even when it comes to like financially and money and like us splitting things or working on financially, how do we work things together? It's like, well, I don't want to do that because I don't want to owe you. I don't want to allow you to help me in a situation because I don't want to feel like I owe you anything. I don't want to feel like you have control because this is over. This is done. You don't control me. I don't control you. We just have to make this work together because we have a child in this relationship we have together. And we got to do what's best for her.
mm,
And I found that all the time when we talked, because those conversations were so tenuous, because we had so many of these old beliefs about this person that was in our head, and because we hadn't forgave, it made anything we were trying to get done 10 times harder.
mm,
And it took 10 times longer. And I just kind of got to a place where I got fed up, quite frankly. I was like, I'm tired of this. Like, I'm tired of expending this kind of energy every time I talk with you. I'm tired of everything always having to be a big deal or we have to like bicker and argue over dumb stuff. Like, I'm tired of this. This isn't how I want to live my life. I know it's not how you want to live your life. We've got to get past this. And so, where I started with was I had
mm,
to forgive. I realized that. Like, I had to pray about it and I had to ask God, like, God,
mm,
give me the ability to see her in a different light. Give me the ability to not focus on the things that's happened in the past. Yes, the past is
mm,
the past, but the past doesn't dictate the future. Help me to see something different in her. And it was the help me to see something different in her that I think shifted a lot for me and helped me to get to a place where I could start to forgive and heal in that relationship to the extent that we were no longer just bickering and arguing over dumb stuff, but we were actually working towards a common goal and doing it in a way that it was successful and it was done in a way that there was respect on both sides. Because I think
mm.
that was the big thing is we had got to a place. If you've been through a toxic or even a tough relationship, once the disrespect line is crossed, it's hard to not go over that line again because you've already done it. So it's easy to go back. It almost becomes your first thing too. And so to rein it back in where the disrespect wasn't there and it was respect on both sides, I realized
Mm,
that I had to see her differently. And that was what prompted this episode and what we were talking about was that I had to realize that the journey and path that God has her on
mm,
is one that he has created just for her. And even
mm,
though in the times that I'm going through my stuff and I'm seeing what I see, I don't know what God's working on in her life. And this could be for someone who is a believer in God or not. God still has
mm.
his hand on people's lives and taking them through their journey and their path.
Yep.
And it wasn't until I started to shift my mindset and I realized, like, well, who is she first? First, she's my daughter's mom. And I want to respect that because
Yeah.
my daughter to me is one of the greatest gifts that I've ever received in this life and ever will receive in this life is just that life form of someone who is a part of you, comes from your DNA, has your smile, has your sense of humor. Like she's that and she brings so much love and light into my life. And so I'm eternally grateful to her mom because between the two of us, we created this beautiful human being. But also I
Yeah.
have to understand that like when I see her and I'm what I started to do is I started picturing her as a role model and as someone that my daughter will end up looking up to as she grows.
Mm,
And not only that, me also being a role model to my daughter of what she sees when we engage. And I don't want her to see us bickering, arguing, fighting. I want her to see that two people, even if you're at odds with each other at times, can work through stuff. You can figure it out and you can
yeah.
do it in a way that's respectful. So whenever I'm talking to my daughter or getting on her about something of showing respect, I need to emulate that myself.
Mm,
I need to show that myself. And so I had to start changing my perspective. I had to start looking at her mom in a different light. And part of it was she's the mother of my daughter. Second thing was this is someone that I will know my daughter will look up to as a role model. And so I have to emulate what that relationship would look like because I want my daughter to replicate that as she grows. I want her to understand there's respect and this is what respect looks like and this is how you work together. And I have to say, it took a lot of prayer, a lot of prayer for me to get past a lot of the things I had in my past.
Mm,
But once I started looking at her more as this is someone that I am going to help raise this beautiful little girl with, and she sees both of us as role models, I realized that the petty stuff that I was doing could no longer do. And
mm,
I had to let go of my past by forgiving her for the things that I harbored in my heart, but also apologizing for me harboring those things towards her.
mm.
Because sometimes she didn't even know that I was harboring something towards her, which is so wild to believe. But sometimes we don't even know that the pain or the feelings that we have inside that's causing us to not want to forgive or causing us to harbor something deep inside.
Yeah.
We think the other person understands that. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they have absolutely no clue. You can walk in them like, man, I've been mad at you for 5 years because you
Yep.
you slapped my dog or whatever it may be. And they're like, I have no clue what you're talking about. I don't even know who you are. Like, and we've had those experiences. And so there was a lot of acknowledgement that needed to go
Yeah.
into
Mm,
this from the beginning. But again, the first part and the first step for me was I had to let go of what I had experienced and I had to forgive her for those things, whether she owns them or not. I had to forgive and say, you know what, I forgive her. This was not at this time that was rough, but that does not dictate the future that we'll have. We have the opportunity now to write a different future of what our daughter will experience that will help to shape her into the woman she's going to be. And so that was a big lesson for me in my own growth and even in my own journey to be able to swallow. And I'll be honest, I'll be the first one to say it. I'm not perfect, right? Like I still
none of
have
us are.
we still have those we still have those challenges and her and I her mom and I don't always get along or see eye to eye on everything. But what I've learned is that the ways of how I handle things in the past are not the ways of how I handle things now. And so through that forgiveness, this whole like anger and yelling and all that stuff, I don't do that. Like if I don't see eye to eye with her on something or we don't see things, I'm like, hey, we're just not going to see eye to eye on this. And maybe we can take a break and come back and reassess this or rethink about it. So it changed something internally within me to realize that like this no longer is a person that I'm seeing as an adversary or someone that I hate, but I'm actually viewing this person now as a partner and helping me to raise my daughter. And we both have a part to play in that, right?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, Antoine, when you started to work on this because you knew like things have to get better because we have a daughter and there's decisions that need to be made, there does need to be a level of trust, right? And commonality and communication and love, right? You know what I mean? Like that
Mm-hmm.
is the mother of your child, and like you're
Mm-hmm.
saying, you're grateful that you guys were able to come together to create your daughter that you love so much, and resembles you, resembles her. It's like this
Right.
beautiful mix, and a lot of amazing energies there. And I mean, and at some point, I'm sure that relationship was beautiful. We just tend to forget that because of our imperfections and the dramas that happen in any relationship. But when you started working on this, did you speak to her like, this is what I've been, this is what has been going on inside of me about us, and I want to get to a better place because I feel like you know things are getting more serious now, like your daughter came to live with you recently after living with her, like her whole life, right?
Mm-hmm.
After, since you guys broken up.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So when you had the conversation, did and I know that's tough for you because I know you're not, you know, being vulnerable and putting yourself out there. I know that's kind of tough for you, but when that moment, just for anybody that's watching, like, how did you come across that situation to get her on the phone, or was it in person to have that conversation? Like, what was going on with you in that moment that said, you know what, this is the time, and these are the things that I want to get off my chest? Like, how did that
Mhm.
happen?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. So when we when I was making those shifts for me personally, I wasn't specifically expressing them to her. Like
Oh,
these were
okay.
things that I knew that God was dealing with me on, and I was just getting at my breaking point. But what
Mm,
we would do is every time we would meet, we would set aside some time for us to chat. And the chat was really just kind of like, hey, what's going on with you in terms of like things with it was all centered around our daughter. Like, what things are you experiencing? Like, how's things going? How's she developing? Are you having challenges with this? And usually, what happened in those conversations, as usual, is we would divert from what we were supposed to be talking about. And then it started to become a bit of a blame game. Like you start pointing fingers and you start getting back. Well, if you never did this, then we would never be in this situation. And what I ended up realizing was that there was a lot of pain on both sides. She had a lot of pain and I had a lot of pain. And what I've learned is that when you and I'm glad you asked that question because when you sit face
mm,
to face with someone and you're having a conversation and you feel their pain, it
mhm,
does something inside of you.
mhm,
It shifts something. And even if you're upset with them and who they are, we're human. You can't help but empathize with the pain that they're going through in that moment. And that's what would happen is that I would feel the pain and it would change something inside of me where I'm like, this isn't right. And so I had got to a place as time went on, and these were conversations again. We've been let's see, we Ava's now 8 going on 9. She was probably about I think she was 3 when we separated or
mm,
like split up. It's been
yeah.
like 5 years that these conversations have been going on.
Mm,
But it's over the last couple of years that I've started to say, look, I don't want to argue with you. I don't want to be having conversations that are unproductive. And so when we do have
mm,
these things, let's keep the conversations respectful, like setting those ground rules and those boundaries, like we talked about. Let's keep these conversations respectful for each other. We've both been through a lot, but what we've been through is not, this is not the time to deal with that. The time we're spending now is for us to get on the same page with what looks best for our daughter. And let's keep that. And so I had vocalized to her that I was kind of already past this point of always wanting to argue, always wanting to have these like, well, in the past, this was like we're
mhm,
past that. All that's in the past. I've actually forgiven you for that. And I even had said to her at one time that, I've forgiven you for the things we've been through. I'm not going to say that I've gotten rid of all the hurt. The hurt and pain is still there, but I've forgiven you because the decisions we made back then were the decisions we made in that moment. Like we weren't in our healthiest of places. We hadn't worked on ourselves. We,
mm,
we met at such a young age and we grew up together, but we hadn't done no kind of emotional healing. She had her own emotional things that she was going through. I had my own, as I was talking about in the last episode about my time with my dad and him passing away at a young age. So there were so many things that we hadn't worked on ourselves that the
mhm,
reactions and things that we did when we were together and how we treated each other and mistreated each other
mm,
were all a factor of work that hadn't been done and we weren't choosing to do it, or we were choosing to do it in a silo versus like trying to choose it and do it together and being committed to making it better. And because we had those things back then, that's why we experienced what we did. But I told her, I said, we've matured since then. Like we've both have done our own work on ourselves and personally to get better. And I do feel like the relationship between the two of us has improved drastically from where we
oh, that's
started.
awesome.
But I
Mm,
think a lot of that again, and I encourage everyone listening who's going through a similar situation. I mean, it's a journey. It takes time, and it's not something that's going to happen soon, like right on the spot. Like Ariana had said in like one of our previous episodes, it's all on God's timing. You can't force it. You can't force. And I think that was another thing that I struggled with was I felt like I had to force the relationship to get better in order for us to
mhm,
be a certain way for our daughter. But it's like, no, you can't force it. It's going to happen in God's timing. The only thing I can do is be the person God has called me to be. And what God has called me to be is not this person who's sitting here arguing with you across the table over dumb
mhm,
stuff, right? God's calling me to be a leader. Like God's calling me to come in and have the conversations. And if
yeah.
we have to set the stage, like this is what we're going to talk about, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to go down all of the other side conversations about or pointing fingers because that is unproductive and that's not why we're here. So yeah, we did
Wow.
have those conversations, Ariana, but it was it took it took a lot of time for me to get to the place where I could have them, and I had to
Mm,
first start with me and have God deal with me first so that I can go in and forgive first. That's my foundation, right? Forgive. And then from forgiving, build on top of that to start to have a working relationship where everything we do is for the
Let me
best
hear
of
you
our
say,
daughter.